Hi, and welcome to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I'm Dupe Witherick, alcohol free wellbeing and transformational coach, and the best selling author of A Cocktail of Clarity, How to Ditch Drinking, Embody a Joyful New Identity, and Thrive Alcohol Free. This podcast will show you that being alcohol free is not what the traditional narrative says. And even though alcohol is so ingrained in our society that it is okay to give yourself permission to stop drinking if you want to. And you do not have to wait until you hit rock bottom. It is certainly not boring, and I believe ditching drinking is just the start to living an extraordinary life. By getting rid of this one thing, it allows the doors to open to endless possibilities and opportunities. Each week, we will have guests on who are at various stages of the alcohol-free journey, from those who are curious to those who have been alcohol-free for years. We will also have experts on talking about different topics relating to alcohol and beyond. Through these conversations, you will discover what it means to thrive alcohol-free. Enjoy. Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I'm so pleased you are here, and I do hope you've had a really good week. I cannot believe we are already on the 5th of December. Where has this year gone? I wonder if you decided to take a break in dry January this year and you stuck with it. Can you believe you've done a year nearly alcohol free? And if you did dry January and have gone back to drinking and then thought, well, actually, this isn't great, there's another one coming up. So maybe try that when we get round to dry January. And with the Christmas season coming up, there are going to be parties and get-togethers and socializing. And I was thinking about, from a non-drinking perspective, then there are lots of tools and tips we can talk about in terms of what to do, how to say no, and also setting boundaries, because you don't actually have to go to them. If you stop drinking and you think it's triggering, or you think that you'll be tempted to drink and you don't want to, you can say no to events. You don't have to go to all of them. But if you do go, know that you're well within your rights to just say no and to drink whatever it is you want to drink. When people say, what do you want to drink? It doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be an alcoholic one. You can say, I want a soda and lime, or I'd like an alcohol-free something or the other. You don't need to then say, oh, well, I'm not drinking tonight, or make a big deal about it. Just be very clear. And the good thing is, again, this year, more and more alcohol-free drinks have come into the market, more and more restaurants and bars giving that as an option. And there are mocktails as well. So you could always get someone to make you up a mocktail. And speaking of mocktails, if you would like my favorite mocktail recipe guide for the holidays, then I would absolutely suggest you get it. And there are 10 of my favorite recipes in there, but 2 of those are holiday specific recipes. So if that's something you're interested in, then feel free to download the guide. You can do that. I'll put the link in the show notes, and you can get hold of the 2 festive mocktails that are on offer, plus other mocktails, which no doubt will be fun serving if you aren't drinking this holiday season. Okay, so today's guest is Amy Wilkinson, and Amy is an intuitive guide, a yoga teacher and trainer, and a soul and abundance mentor. Her work touches upon many areas, including intuitive development, angel mediumship, soul alignment, manifestation, and spiritual business expansion. At the heart of her work is the belief that we are here to remember that we are a soul having a human experience, here to express our unique gifts and to co-create through the vibration of who we are being. And so Amy guides and supports her clients to break free from the habit of playing small and holding back their light so that they can rise to embody the version of them who is living their dream life now. And we have a fab conversation. I really enjoyed the conversation with Amy. We talked about so many different things, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode. So without further ado, here is the episode with Amy. Welcome, Amy. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm loving that I'm here with you. It's nice to connect again across the seas. Thank you
Yay,
for having me.
absolutely. Oh, not at all. Well, thank you for having me on your podcast. And that was lots of fun. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation as well and hearing a bit more about you. So, for people that might not know you, why don't you give a brief introduction and we'll go from there?
Yeah, okay. I'm sure that a lot of your audience would, probably all of your audience might not know who I am, but my name is Amy Wilkinson. I live over in Australia. So I live in the Sunshine Coast in Queensland in a little beach town called Sunrise Beach. I kind of relocated here a few years ago. My background has been really, I've been an entrepreneur really for most of my adult life, and pretty much all of my adult life. I think I've had one, what you could say, real job when I was my early 20s. But aside from that, I've been working for myself for a good 20 years or so. And I started out really doing yoga and becoming a yoga teacher and then yoga teacher trainer. And I developed yoga studios in Brisbane, in the Brisbane city. And that kind of grew and expanded. And then I started doing yoga retreats and mentoring teachers and all of that, which has been a good part of 15 years. And then over the last few years, I felt a calling to move a little more deeply into, I guess, what I would call my zone of genius or my soul work and away from the yoga, which was a really big decision for me, to be honest. It ended up selling our businesses last year and diving kind of full time into doing the work that I feel really inspired in. I'm a soul mentor, I could say, and an intuitive guide. So I'm also an angel medium, and I really support women to tap into their soul essence. I call it remembering and reclaiming the truth of who you are, and then from that place, tapping into their potential to create or co-create with the universe or manifest their soul's desires. So that's kind of in a nutshell the work that I'm being drawn to and that I'm doing this year. I created a podcast as well that I had you on to. So it's kind of like a summary about me at the moment. I live not too far from the beach with my three children and my husband and my dog. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Oh, that's amazing. And I love the name Sunrise Beach. It sounds heavenly. What's it
It
like?
it is heavenly. And can I say, so I'm a manifestation teacher, and
Yeah,
one of my greatest manifestations, one of them was
yeah.
this house. So we bought a couple of years ago. I've been here for about a little over 2.5 years. We manifested a beautiful house overlooking the beach. So
Oh,
it is Sunrise Beach. So
wow.
the sun does rise behind the ocean here. I
Oh,
can watch it from my balcony. And that was something that I really co-created. And it wasn't even something that was on my vision board. It was better than that. It's a real kind of step up expansion moment when this landed in a couple of years ago. So that's one of my little things that I feel really deeply, deeply, deeply grateful for. And every day, and I look out at our view, I am extremely grateful for where we live. It's a beautiful part of the world, that's for sure. You have to come over one
yeah.
time.
I would love to. Absolutely. It sounds magical. And the fact that you manifested that, will come on to that. I'd love to hear a bit more about the manifestation part and the work you do. I think it's fascinating. And I also think it's going to be really helpful for the people listening to sort of maybe get some tips on maybe your top three tips to manifest. But we'll come on to that. And I
Yeah.
suppose the other reason you're here is you're alcohol free as well, aren't you?
Look, I am. It's been an interesting journey for me. In all honesty, I've never been a really big drinker. If you want me to, speak to that a little bit about my journey with it, is that something you want me to
Yeah,
dive into?
why not?
Yeah, I mean, look, I kind of went on a bit of a spiritual pilgrimage, awakening journey in my kind of mid 20s. I left the city and felt this calling to, I don't know if you know of Byron Bay. Some of you listening might know of Byron Bay in New South
Mm,
Wales. It's quite an iconic, used to be a beautiful hippie town, and it still is. It's a beautiful part of the world. And I never really was a big drinker. It was interesting though. and I know you've spoken about the mummy drinking culture, like after having children. So I have a 14-year-old now and I have two twin boys. So I did notice that it shifted after having children. And I think for those of you who have children, I think you go through such a big identity shift. And in that identity shift, such a loss of who you were, and you enter this new world, or you kind of thrust into this new world. So I can recognize that I used drinking as a kind of soothing balm during those times. So in both of the pregnancies, or not pregnancies, but post pregnancy, once the kids were in their toddler years, catching up with other families and couples and mothers. So I can recognize now what that was about and how it did become an unhealthy pattern for me. But I feel like my journey into going alcohol free has been a more recent one. I would say probably over the last 18 months. So I feel like I'm still in the earlier part of the journey, in all honesty, but it's one that was a deep calling. It was divinely guided. Let's say that the choice, the feeling to just start to shift and really look at my relationship with it, and then start to shift that relationship. So it's definitely been a more recent one, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months, I'd say.
So when you say it was a divine calling, tell me a bit more about that. That sounds interesting.
So I mentioned that I sold the yoga business and we moved away from the city that I was living in. We had this, my husband and I, we're big dreamers and we don't do things in halves. And we really like to challenge ourselves to go, okay, what is it? What is it that we really want? What is our soul desire? So we're both on board with that. And I think after COVID, which again was another place, as many people I think that used alcohol as a bit of a balm during that time to just navigate the uncertainty and the challenging times that came with it. But it was also such a big awakening period. And I really decided after that that I really understood the importance of sovereignty and the importance of deciding for ourselves what is our soul truth and the path that we want to lead. So that's what led us to consider moving up the coast and kind of having that sea change. And when that happened, so this was a couple of years ago, I had this real sense that I wanted to find myself again in a new place, away from the habits and the environments and the situations and perhaps the relationships that I'd been surrounding myself with. And I really wanted to evolve, I guess, and call in a bigger vision, because I knew I was going to be transitioning out of the, I guess, stability and safety of the work that I'd been doing into something new without knowing what that was. So it's kind of leaping a bit into the great unknown, which again, I tend to do that, feel the fear and do it anyway and take the leap. With that leap and going into the unknown, there was just this sense that there were going to be things that I needed to let go of in order to actualize a bigger vision. And so I also, over this time, did my angel mediumship certification, and I started to really develop more my intuitive channel, my connection with my spiritual guidance system, my angels, and so forth, and became so much more deeply connected to my intuition. So it was something that was divinely guided. It's like, if this is what you want, if this is what you're going for, that bigger vision, that bigger dream that both me and my husband had, I needed to be in the best possible place within myself. And for me, it was really about clarity. It's really about, well, I teach a lot around manifestation, the law of vibration, and how we are all vibratory beings. We are giving off energy. And in order to call in the dream or the desire that's planted in your heart, and we've all got that dream in our heart, we need to become a vibrational match for that dream in order for it to manifest. So we need to be able to literally raise up our energetic frequency. Now I became a lot more aware of the habits and the situations and the substances that were doing the opposite of that. So just more acutely aware of how I was feeling in certain spaces or how I was feeling consuming different things. And alcohol was certainly one of those things. Now, bearing in mind, when I made a decision to break up with it, I didn't have a really strong, big drinking practice. I was someone that would maybe have a couple of drinks. It wasn't really big for me. So I felt like it wasn't a really difficult thing for me to let go of. And I think I said this in my podcast with you as well. It wasn't something that I chose, right, now I'm going to quit and that's it. I wanted to just see how I could become more conscious in those times where I would reach for a drink and going, okay, and why am I doing that? And is this something that feels good? And what I noticed was as I started to ask myself those questions and tap into that, I didn't have the desire there. It's just like my body was saying, no, I actually don't need it. What does it feel like to reach for this kind of non-alcoholic drink instead? Yeah, that's actually fine. That feels good. So yeah, that was the kind of shift that happened for me.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because similar to you, I had this real sense that actually letting go of alcohol was going to be a good thing. I had this thought it would set me free in some ways. So I absolutely get it. And again, by the time I stopped drinking, I probably, I drank probably quite a bit in my 20s, 30s. It was more of a habit and mummy wine culture. But then
Mm,
towards the end, I'd gone off a lot of the wine as well. I couldn't drink those sort of heavy red wine. Well, wine completely, I'd gone off by the time I stopped drinking. So I wasn't drinking huge amounts, but I could tell that it wasn't serving me, it wasn't helping. And I didn't know what was coming up next. I wasn't thinking about a big dream specifically, but I was thinking there's more. And actually, to get to that more, potentially letting go of the alcohol would help. So love that. And thank you
yeah,
for
I think that
sharing.
quite often when we're called for something more, when we're called to go
Mm,
bigger, we
mm,
need to be able to open up. We need to be able to expand in
yeah,
our container to be able to receive that in. But that also means we need to make room that
absolutely.
there are things that we need to let go of. And I'm not just
Mm,
talking in alcohol, maybe one of those things. Like for me, it was also
yeah.
realizing that coffee wasn't making me feel good. And
Mm,
I became more aware of how I was feeling after certain things and
mm,
prioritizing feeling really expansive and regulated in my nervous system, which is a really big part of manifestation as well, is being
mm,
really, really comfortable and regulated and relaxed in your nervous system to be able to call in those soul desires. And so there were
yeah,
certain things for me that I was having. I was like, yeah, this doesn't make me feel good. And I decided I actually wanted to feel good every day. That's
yeah.
not to say, as I said, I'm still early days of my journey. So there have been a couple of times where I would have a drink or like
Mm,
one drink and see how it would feel. And I'd always regret it afterwards.
mm,
I think when you do release it and you might then have a drink, you just realize how much it impacts you. And yeah, it's not really worth it for me. Way.
mm. Yeah, and I love what you just said about I want to feel good every day. Question
Yeah.
for you, and this is something I found people don't allow themselves to feel good every day. It's really interesting. I think we've been conditioned to think we can't feel good
Yeah.
all the time. We've been
Yeah.
conditioned to think actually feeling good means something bad's going to happen, or I can't feel good all the time because someone else isn't feeling good. And you look around and you think, if I feel good, what does that mean? It's really interesting because people who I coach, they worry about feeling good all the time because
Yeah.
that's not what your body's used to. So I'd love you to touch on that a little bit more
Hmm.
because you said you've let go of things and you want to feel good all the time, but you've given yourself permission, I would suggest, to actually want to feel good all the time.
Yeah, and I love that you said that. I think that joy can be triggering for a lot of people that
Mm,
aren't really allowing themselves to feel good. I love that. I think it's Gay Hendricks that said, "How good are you willing to let life get?" And one of the
yeah.
things for me because we have been conditioned, we've been programmed in a society that doesn't really make us feel very good. I mean, if you turn on the news, which by the way was a practice that I ceased a long time ago, was listening to the news, having that blasting through, like because of that kind of programming that is very, if you look at the news, it's all negative, it's all
It's
heavy.
so negative.
And it pulls us down and it pulls us into a stress response. And a lot of what we're experiencing in society, it's designed that way to make us feel like we're powerless and we're separate. But really, that's a choice. That is a choice. And joy is a choice as well. But we need to be able to get to a place where we can allow ourselves to let it in. And I feel like the worthiness piece here is really important. You can be joyous. You can let that. And by the way, I want to mention this isn't bypassing emotions at all. Like some days I don't feel good, but I'll let myself feel what's there in order to then let that shift and alchemize that into a better feeling, really. So none of this is about just bypassing it and saying, I'm going to be joyful. But as you said, to your point, we don't really let ourselves feel it unless we've maybe achieved something or accomplished something or done a hard day's work, or I'll let myself feel good on the weekend or when I have a holiday or something like that. We're getting those small pleasures rather than realizing that actually joy is our inherent state. At the core of who we are, at that vibration is joy. It's one of the highest vibrational feelings, if not the highest, that we can access. In the yogic philosophy, when you look at your true nature, it's pure bliss, it's pure joy. But we get so entrenched in the layers of the conditioning that, as you said, it takes us away from where we are kind of addicted to life being hard and struggle, so much so that we expect it. And when we expect it from a manifestation perspective, when we expect it, guess what? Life just says, yeah, here you go, right? Sure. Life just mirrors. Life just says yes, and it mirrors back what we believe to be true. What is the core frequency that we are putting out there? So if that is life is hard, or if I'm going to achieve anything or receive anything that feels good or joyful, I need to work hard for it. I need to struggle, or I need to sacrifice something, because at the core of it, I can't have it all. I can't quite possibly have it all. And this is where my work comes in, and where I love working with women is debunking that and going, you know what? You are a divine, expansive soul. You are connected to all that there is, and you can absolutely have it all, have all the abundance across all areas of your life. But for some people, if they're not used to receiving, that can feel a lot. It can feel too much.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, isn't it? It's allowing yourself to receive. And as you said earlier, being open to that as well. Because again, there's this thought that people have that if I have this, someone else is losing out, or if I have this, I'm not, as you mentioned earlier, the worthiness, I'm not worthy of having this. And so
Yeah.
when you work with women, how do you get them over that hurdle?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a lot of belief stuff which we do as well, which I do in that work. And the thing is with beliefs, which are basically just accumulation of our thoughts that we've had all this over and over and over and over again. And a lot of them come into our beingness, into our subconscious awareness between the ages of 0 to 7, or even prior when we're in the womb. And many of them aren't even ours. Many of them come from a caregiver or a teacher or someone in our life or the media or society that tells us these things. So I think when you've got any kind of belief like that, the first thing is to ask yourself, well, is that actually true? Like, I love the work of Byron Katie as well. And she puts those 4 questions like, is it true? Do you absolutely know that that's true? And how do you feel when you believe? Like, what could actually be truer? The thing is with beliefs, you can change them. Just like you can change your mind, like, I'm just going to wear this dress today, I'm going to wear this. I don't think people realize we don't need to stay really married to our beliefs, but we have the capacity to shift and change that. So, what could be a better feeling thought? And to your point about people worrying that if I have this, then others won't. And I think that that's really, really interesting. And I'm an abundance mentor as well. And I think that that conversation comes up a lot when we can talk about wealth and abundance. It's like, well, how can I have this when there are children who are starving? All right. When there are people who are really struggling, how can I have this? And to that point, I would say, well, how does you not having it help them? Are you in a better position or a worse position to be able to support and help them if you are limiting your abundance, what you can call in, what you can receive? Because I know for me, the more that I'm able to have and hold, the more I'm able to support others, other businesses, other people, give generously, all of that. So you kind of need to look under the hood and do the work to just debunk some of those lies. A lot of that's coming from our ego, which our ego believes that it's separate. It's coming from the ego. And a lot of it is just absolute lies and not true. And so you can choose to change that. Actually, what feels better than believing that? Actually, it feels good to believe that I can have it all. I'm worthy of having it all. And me having it all doesn't take anything from anybody else. In fact, I can do more to support others as well.
Yeah, yeah. And it is really moving from that scarcity mindset to the abundance mindset. And I think, as you say, a lot of us have been conditioned into that scarcity mindset. Whereas, to your point, when you have more, you can give more, and you can help more, and you have choices as well versus not. And so that whole lack mentality is again something that people just get bought into, that you don't need to buy into.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a choice. But you're right. I mean, we are very much programmed in the scarcity and in separation and in lack.
Mm,
And none of
mm,
that is really true. I mean, there are enough resources and money in this entire world for everybody to live very abundantly.
yeah.
And a lot of it is about what we believe, but it's very much, many of us think that we're separate from, that it's outside of us, that we need to somehow go and earn it and seek it. And my work is reminding people that you are abundance. That is your
Mm,
nature. That is your truth. As a soul, you are expansive, and you come into this world to continue to expand and grow and be abundant. And that is your birthright. So rather than being separate from it, it's coming back into a recognition that actually that is your truth. That is who you are. And to your point about receivership, and tying this back in with the conversation about alcohol as well, I've been doing a lot of work. It's work that I do with my client, but before I do it with my clients, I've got to live it and embody it myself. And that is, how do we open up and expand our capacity to be able to receive and hold what it is that wants to come through for us, which is our soul desires.
mm,
And in order to do that, we need to be really, really regulated in our nervous system. We need to really reestablish safety. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to hold it. I mean, this is why the statistics are that lottery winners, I think it's like
mm,
70% or something. It's a ridiculous statistic, really, that will lose their fortune within a couple of years because they haven't conditioned their nervous system to feel really safe to be able to hold that level of wealth and abundance. So it's
mm,
really important. We all have a bigger dream inside of us. And first, it's about allowing yourself, right? Like allowing yourself to feel that. Many won't let themselves feel that. And then it's secondly about, okay, how can I let myself receive? What is that? What does that look like? What does that involve? And yeah, maybe that looks like saying a few more no's, putting up a few more boundaries to the things that have been perhaps taking your energy rather than plumping you up. And that was, for me, as I said, a bit of the journey over the last 12 to 18 months or so.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. And yeah, hopefully really helpful for the person listening. So I'd love to hear your manifestation story with your house. How did that come about?
Yeah. So I feel like I've been consciously manifesting for a long time. I started to get into manifestation because my mum had a lot of books around and she used to listen to Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer and all of that back then, kind of OGs of the self-development.
Yeah.
And I think it was about 16 or 17, and Wayne Dyer was one of the first books that I read the time when I was had broken up from a partner. So I was devastated and felt like I was in crisis, as you do when you're a teen. And so I feel like I have been consciously manifesting for a lot of my life. Houses has been a really big one for me, but certainly when we were selling our house in Brisbane and wanting to move up to the Sunshine Coast, I did have a vision. And I think these are really important kind of tools, is that I let myself dream for what I wanted that house to, first of all, look like. And this is just like, I would love to have blah, 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 like a big kitchen or this or open plan living, just getting down to some of those details. So you're kind of painting a picture. I mean, our imagination is so powerful. We just need to be able to let it run wild. And I'm always asking my clients to dream a little bit bigger and go a little bit more expansive and allow yourself to. So I started to do that. And then a really big part of this with manifestation, it's not just the positive thinking and thinking shiny, happy thoughts. And that's only going to get you so far. Even the same with vision boards. I mean, that's a tool. It's only going to get you so far. And I feel like a lot of those processes can feel quite externalized, feel quite manufactured in a way. Manifestation, I teach, is more embodied, it's more surrendered. And to tune into embodied manifestation, we really, really need to tap into, what does that feel like? Right? What does that feel like? So for me, it was, what does this feel like to walk into this home? What does this feel like to be sitting in this home, looking out at the view, feeling the wood floors under your feet? And so you put yourself in that vision. And I did. I worked on that practice a lot. When we eventually, and I will preference with this, like, we'd sold our family home, we'd sold our home, jumped off the cliff, didn't know what was coming. I didn't see anything that I really liked. There was nothing that was matching this. And we were getting down to the wire in terms of needing to move out of our home. And then this suddenly came up. And the first thought I had was, how are we going to get that? How are we going to afford that? All of that. Like, the ego mind just has a field day with this. When you're wanting to expand, the ego is going to come in and tell you all the reasons why that's dangerous and you can't, because it wants to keep you the same and safe, right? We found this home, and when I walked in, it's like my soul knew that this was it. And yet I had all of the fear and the doubt. How can you do this? No, there'd be so many people interested. How is it even possible? All of that. So despite the resistance, I continued to see it and feel it. So a very big part of this manifestation is acting as if, right? What does it feel like to come home to that? And then the rest is history. We bought the home at auction, and I, even on the auction day, I embodied the feeling and I knew that it was going to be ours. There is a piece of surrender here that's really important, because I also believe that we have soul contracts with homes. We have soul contracts with work that we're going to do and so forth. So I do also believe that there is a destiny piece in this. There are absolutely destiny potentials. And then it's about, are you going to let yourself then receive that? Are you going to believe that that's possible for yourself? So that's when we can tap into that potential and allow ourselves to expand, to call in that, the manifestation itself. So we bought the home, and it was everything that I'd put on paper and more, because I believe when you're working with the universe, manifestation is a dual job. It's not just you doing this. You are working with your divinity. You're working with spirit, source, whatever you want to call it. It's the unseen realm. So you're working in partnership with that. And I believe when you surrender and you trust in spirit's work here as well, you open up to even bigger magic, like bigger than what you could even conceive or imagine with your limited senses. And that's when the true magic of manifestation comes into play, when we're willing to almost hand over those dreams and desires and trust that if we have that dream in our heart, then it's meant for us. And quite often when we allow it, it's better than what you could ever imagine. And that's what I found with this home. And the other point with that is about having that dream and desire is that if it is there in your heart, it's because you absolutely have the capacity to bring it into form. It's there for you and you can let it in.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I absolutely agree with that as well. But it's tricky, isn't it? Especially, I don't know how long you were waiting for this home, but it's that waiting period because you can surrender and trust, but it won't necessarily happen in the time frame that you want it to happen. As you say, it's generally bigger and better than you could ever imagine when it happens. But for people that might be listening to this and thinking, okay, well, I can do that, but I've been doing that, but nothing seems to be shifting. What's your advice
Yeah.
there?
Nothing is shifting in the 3D and what you can see, right?
Mm, mm,
So much of life is in the unseen realm. 99.999% of it, in fact, if
yeah.
we look from an energy perspective, what we are seeing with our limited five senses in the three-dimensional world, it's like a dot, a speck. And so this is really about developing trust and faith in the unseen, in
Mm,
that 99.999% of reality. How can you cultivate a deeper level of trust and faith in that, in knowing that you are supported, in knowing that life, the universe has your back? A lot of people will pull out, they'll eject and they'll go, this is too much. I'm going to go
mm,
and, I don't know, let's say in my example, I'm going to go and get a rental, or I'm going to downgrade my dream in a way and go for something simpler. So they will do that. And I see that. So you are going to get tested. The universe loves to test and challenge us in order to up level us, in order to support us with our growth so that we can go, okay, I'm so ready. I'm so available for this. So you will get those tests and challenges coming through. I'm not saying that this is an easy process, but the more that you can anchor into trust and faith that it's all taken care of, the better off you're going to be. And that's when you will then start to see your manifestation come into form. But we can get really impatient. We can get really impatient, and we're always in our ego mind looking for evidence to tell us that it's coming or it's here. So we need to be able to lean into discomfort as well, and then choose to stay anchored in trust, even if we're not seeing the evidence. And it will always come through. It always does when you operate like that.
yeah. Yeah, that's really great advice. And it's maintaining that feeling, isn't it? And belief that it's already done. And as you say, also having that regulated nervous system. So I do things like breath work and EFT and other things like that to help people just get into that regulated nervous system because it's so important across the board, regardless of what you're doing. And I know you've been doing yoga for years, and I don't teach yoga, but I practice yoga every day. And I've found personally that's really just helped my nervous system stay regulated. But what other things would you suggest people could potentially do to regulate that nervous system and feel safe? And then it comes back to everything we've talked about. So I've loved this conversation, but it comes back to then allowing yourself to receive, allowing yourself to feel that joy, allowing yourself to feel worthy, allowing yourself to actually think this is my desire and I can go after that and it will come and it is mine. So what other types of things or the things I've mentioned you want to maybe go deeper into, but what would
Yeah.
you suggest?
Look, I think Breath is definitely key. What I love about breath is that we all have access to it, and it doesn't cost anything, right? I
Yeah.
love all of the somatic practices because really it's you and your body. It's not having to go and seek it outside of yourself, although there are certain modalities which are brilliant and can support you, but we have so much within our own self that we can access. So whether, you know, I always look at what are these practices that make me feel good? What are the practices that lift up my frequency? So breath work is one. Any kind of intentional movement where you're moving and uniting the movement with the breath. So yoga is one of those. For some people, they might feel regulated dancing. Even things like, I'm going to think of things that you might not even think of, but like having a really good cry actually moves you from your sympathetic nervous system into your parasympathetic nervous system. So allowing yourself to feel what is there that needs to be felt, giving yourself an opportunity to, and this might be tricky for some people initially, but to sit with yourself, to be in the silence, to be in the stillness, whether that's with a guided meditation. I'm a big meditator, but I know for some they might find it challenging initially to meditate. But even if you can start with a 3 or 5 minute practice where you are, if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, where you're intentionally slowing down your breath. It doesn't need to be fancy or elaborate. It might just be a simple 4 count in, taking a pause at the top, and then perhaps a 4 or 5 count out. You might have a longer exhalation, which is going to down regulate the nervous system. And then I teach my clients how to really tap into their soul essence. So it's the part of us that's beyond our physicality that was here before we incarnated. And if you believe that, will be after we go. It's the part of us that's beyond our mind. So tapping into, and I encourage people to establish their own spiritual relationship, whatever you want to call that. Some will call that God, some will call that love, some will call that universe, source. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you establish your own connection and that you can start to establish a level of safety to tap into that. And the beautiful thing is that we all have that. We have access to that. We have a guidance system that is here with our spiritual team, with our guides, with our angels. Like we're assigned with that before we come into this world. And our guidance team or your soul team is here to lead you and support you, but you need to ask because they won't interfere with free will. So I always suggest if you can have a practice, cultivate a practice, maybe first thing when you wake up in the morning, where instead of jumping up straight away and going into your day, or instead of reaching for your phone, you become conscious of being in your body, breathing into your body, tapping into your soul essence, which you'll soon start to do when you consciously breathe. And maybe starting to develop a relationship where you might ask your soul, what is it that I need to know right now? Right. Or you might start to tap in, how would I love to feel today? What would that feel like? What would joy feel like for me today? You set yourself up in such a powerful way where you're then letting yourself be guided by that essence, by your soul, rather than being guided by your programming, by your mind, by what you've just been doing on repeat, on autopilot, likely quite unconsciously, because that's just what we do in our humanness. So it's really about disrupting that pattern, giving yourself that space to drop in and knowing that you're really, really safe to do that. And it will get easier each day. You might find that a 3 minute practice all of a sudden stretches out to 5 or 10. Maybe the next thing you know, you're happy to be in that space for a good half an hour. And that's really potent, really powerful in supporting your nervous system to feel really safe and regulated.
So good, such good tips. And it's so true. I think we underestimate the breath, don't we? We underestimate the fact that we can access that at any point. At any point, we can really regulate ourselves and tap into that, tap into something that's just there, which again, so many people live in fight or flight mode. and then panic and don't know what to do and stress and worry, and just breathing helps
Yeah.
you to calm that down and as you say, step into
Yeah.
more of the soul guidance versus the ego guidance.
Absolutely. Like another beautiful practice is even, and I do this quite a lot as well, particularly if I feel that there's a fear coming up, right? Which
Mm.
is might be in the form of a doubt or resistance, and you can feel that activated. You
Mm.
can feel a level of trigger or activation in your nervous system. It's just to put your hand on your heart and to speak kindly to yourself. And you might breathe into that space and then remind yourself that it's okay. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe to keep expanding. You're safe to keep growing. Our soul is here to grow and expand. And yet our mind and our ego wants to keep us in the same and in the familiar. And this is where there's always that push pull in knowing that there's a big aspect of us that wants to keep growing and reach for a higher branch and go after a bigger dream and vision. And then what we come up against is that part of us that's very much in fear, that's being guided by fear. Yeah, we need to have fear. It keeps us alive to an extent, but we can't have it in the driver's seat of our life. We need to be able to shift it out of the driver's seat and move ourselves and our in our soul alignment consciously into that driver's seat. And that can take practice, but it just takes conscious effort to notice when you're falling asleep at the wheel, to notice
Mm.
when you're becoming unconscious to the old patterns and the old stories and the old fear responses, and then to choose a new direction, to choose a new way, to choose a new feeling and a new thought that's rooted in truth rather than in fear, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It's that choosing though, isn't it? And that's the tricky part, choosing that new thought, choosing to think differently, because it's so automatic. The
Yeah.
subconscious mind generally rules the show. 95% of the things we do is in through the subconscious mind. And so we do need to be conscious of it and need to shift that and shift the patterns. And as you say, it's taking those little mini steps, doing the 3 minutes and then maybe becoming 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but also really noticing those thoughts and changing them. Again, it's a pattern interruption, which it is work. It's not an easy thing to do, and it doesn't happen overnight. And so just to encourage people who might be listening, it is something that you do have to practice and keep practice. It never
Yeah.
stops. The work never really stops.
It doesn't. And I think you realize though, as you go down this path, whilst it's work, I mean, I know for me, I couldn't imagine another way
Mm.
because once you start to experience that and how empowered you can be in your life, there is no other choice.
Mm.
It's just what feels so good. But
Mm.
it as you start to do that, it's like anything. It's like if you go to the gym and you want to work out and you want to tone your muscles, it's not going to happen straight away. But all of a sudden, if you keep that consistency up, it does get easier. Developing your intuition and your connection with your soul, it's exactly the same. We all have access to that. We all have muscles. We all have that intuitive muscle as well. But it
Mm.
takes conscious effort to continue to develop that relationship. But as you do, you bring all of your senses online. So your sixth sense as well, and all of your clairs you bring online. And
Mm.
honestly, it's like a superpower that you then have access to. And once you get a taste of that, you're like, why would I choose any other way? And so back to, I guess, the alcohol-free conversation, like for me, in tapping into that, I want to feel like that every day. I want to
Mm.
feel clear and connected and aligned with that essence every day, not just for me, but for my family and for the people that I work with, my clients, for my community. It's so important.
Well, I've absolutely loved this conversation, Amy. You are just so full of wisdom, and personally, I think it's going to be an amazing episode that's going to land with so many people. So thank you so much for taking the time. Is there anything else that you want to leave people with?
Thank you. I mean, I've loved this conversation. I'm deeply passionate about empowering women, men as well. I particularly work with women. And I guess just to leave them with knowing or reminding them, I really love to remind women, love to remind them that you can have it all and that you're not limited by who you are or what you think or your mind. That's not who you are. And so it's a real remembrance that you are limitless. You are part of the whole one consciousness. And we're moving into the age of miracles, really. And I believe that we can access miracles via our consciousness. And as you said before, via our choice. And the other thing is, you can choose that in any moment, in any moment. You are so worthy of choosing that right now. And it's got nothing to do with where you've been or your past or anything about who you are in this moment. You can always choose another way. And yeah, that's probably what I would finish with.
Love that. And so we always end our podcast with the question, what does thriving alcohol-free mean to you?
And it's such a great question. I'm going to just go with what wants to come through. And the word that comes through for me is homecoming, really. I think it's
Nice.
coming back to our truth and realizing that, for me, it's realizing that I have all of this now, that that's not something that I need. Whereas I believed, I thought that I needed that. So thriving for me is really, it's about coming back to the clearest, most connected, soul expressed, fully expressed version of me that I can possibly access.
I love that answer. Thank you so much. Love
Thank you,
it.
Dupe.
So how do people get in touch with you?
So my business is The Light Place. So I have a website, thelightplace.com.au. I'm Amy underscore The Light Place at Instagram. So either via my Instagram, my website, I've got some free resources on there as well. Actually, I do have a somatic practice. If you go to my website, there's a bunch of somatic practices which support you. So there's EFT tapping and meditation and some subliminal affirmations, which are really great to listen to. So they're actually a free resource on my website that you can go to and download that, or you can pop over onto my Instagram and say hello. And I'm happy to chat or receive any questions that you might have as well. It's been a delight to chat to you.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much. I'm sure people will be in touch and really appreciate you being a wonderful guest on the show. So I will
Thank you
see you
so much, Dupe.
soon.
Yeah,
Thank
love our
you.
chats. Thank you, darling.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Amy. I do hope that you enjoyed that episode. I loved what she said about joy being our inherent state. And actually, we probably don't tap into joy, and a lot of people are skeptical when it comes to that. So it absolutely is something that you can see in the everyday little things. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Joy should just be the way we are and the way we see things. And seeing little things that bring daily joy is a real blessing. And it's something that when you become alcohol free, you do start to notice a bit more, that you feel the joy and you feel those positive feelings. And so I love the question, what would joy feel like today? And how do I want to feel today? Because we can create that feeling as well. We can create the feelings that we want to create in life. And actually, when we wake up intentionally and say, how do I want to feel? It's a little bit like putting on clothes. We can decide what clothes we want to wear. We can also decide how we want to feel for the day. And so getting into the pattern of asking yourself, how do I want to feel? And what would that feeling look like today? Was a really helpful tip. So I do hope you found that helpful. I also loved what she said about thriving alcohol free and it coming back to our truth, and it's like a homecoming. And so again, if you are thinking about ditching drinking, or if you already stopped drinking but you're not seeing those things, then feel free to book a call with me. I'd love to connect and talk to you and just see how we can change that and work with you to support you to really think about what you would like and work towards that. Okay, well, I do hope that you found that useful. And again, regulating your nervous system is such an important thing. And so that's breathing exercises. It could literally just be shaking and just clearing your body, dancing around the kitchen. It could be EFT, emotional freedom technique is really good. Tapping is something that is just so helpful to really begin to regulate that nervous system. So if you are wanting more of that as well, then do let me know. I can talk more about that on the podcast. And if you'd like to gain more tools when it comes to regulating your nervous system, then that is absolutely something that I do as part of my coaching. So again, feel free to book a call and we can talk about how I can help you to do that. Well, I hope you have the most delightful week and I will see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe so you get alerted every time I drop a new episode. I'd love it if you could rate, review, and share this episode. Feel free to tag me on Instagram at Thrive Alcohol Free and follow me for daily tips. If you would like to work with me, I offer one-to-one coaching sessions and have my group coaching program. If you're not yet ready for coaching, I also have a self-paced online course, which is a companion to my book, A Cocktail of Clarity. All the links are in the show notes. I will see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful week. Take care.